And David was enraged by this. Remember, this is the 41st day that the Israelites have faced Goliath, but this is the first time it has happened to David. Then David spoke to the men who were standing by him and saying, "What will be done for the man who kills this Philistine and takes away the reproach from Israel? For who is this uncircumcised Philistine, that he should taunt the armies of the living God?" And the people answered him in accord with his word, saying, "Thus it will be done for the man who kills him." 1 Samuel 17:26-27. David then meets King Saul. David said to Saul, "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine. Your servant will go and fight him." Saul replied, "You are not able to go out against this Philistine and fight him. You are only a young man, and he has been a warrior from his youth." But David said to Saul, "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a sheep from the flock, I went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep from its mouth. When it turned on me, I seized it by its hair, struck it, and killed it. Your servant has killed both the lion and the bear. This uncircumcised Philistine will be like one of them, because he has defied the armies of the living God."
So something to think about. Listen to this. Think about this. So if you go and you're in a place, now remember the story of David, how he got his origin, how he began his story. So his story ended up like this, or it began like this. David was called in by his father because a prophet came to the house. Now think about this. The prophet came to the house, and it was not the first choice of the father. So that being said, the shepherd boy was last. Now compare that to Jesus. He is a carpenter's son. You know what I mean? Like, it's not a highly sought after. David wasn't a warrior already. He wasn't in training. Chances are the other brothers, while the youngest was out watching the flock, they were having some sort of training or some sort of something, because the prophet Samuel came to the house. So it wasn't like a hidden thing about this family. Somebody knew something about them, or they were important in some way. And that being said, the youngest son was not. He wasn't a great big guy, apparently. Then we have that in comparison, because later when he goes and tries on King Saul's armor, it didn't fit him. And let that be a lesson to all of us, that God equips you with what he wants to equip you with to fight the battles that are coming your way. And do not put on somebody else's armor trying to go fight a battle, or it will only weigh you down and get in the way to be able to be successful in the time of the battle. You're not called to wear somebody else's armor. You are called to use what God has gifted you in. You are called to use what God has given you. And that was to David a sling. That's what he knew. So after he was anointed, he still went out into the field of waiting, to where if it was me, can I just be honest? If it was me and I got anointed to something, and the prophet came and said I was gonna be the next king and all this other, I would be saying, where's my kingly training? Instead, he went right back out to the field, his father's field, not even his field. He didn't even own it. He went out to his father's flock to protect the sheep. What happened? When he was out there, and before too, he wasn't in a place where it was sought after, but he was in a place where God can get him by himself to get his attention, to where when God wanted to train him to do something, it wasn't foreign to him. When he wanted him to do a certain thing, it was not, he would know how to use the sling. Sometimes we end up in places where we're like, oh God, where are you? Like, it's time for me to get moving now. It's time for me to be important. It's time for me to do something great with my life. And maybe you're in a field where you feel like all waiting, but it's actually a place where God is preparing you for the promise that he has said will be yours one day. Think of it in that way, and the waiting won't become so annoying. It won't be so frustrating, because the Bible says that everything that we go through, both good and bad, God works those things for the good of those that love him, good and bad. Waiting or moving, God has it in his hands. Take yours off of it and let God do his thing. Let God be God and stop trying to tell him how you want your life to map out. See, this is how we get in a place in our lives where we get so deluded in our divine destiny. Like, God calls us to something. He puts things inside of us from the day that we were born. He puts in skills. He puts in ways of thinking. And as we go through life, a lot of times those things can be reconditioned and contorted and twisted to where it's not even recognizable anymore, and it can be looked at as a bad personality trait when in reality, God placed it inside of you so that you would use it for his glory once you stop being an idiot and let him have all of you. We want to be blessed by God without any of the burden of his glory. So let's keep going before I'm gonna get in the rabbit trail.
The Lord who rescued me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will rescue me from the hand of this Philistine.
See, he knew from this, I'm not stopping again, I am, but he knew from his experience of going up against lions and bears, maybe tigers, oh my. He knew that if God would help him, rescue him, and give him strength, then why would he not do it now in another situation? Sometimes we forget what God brings us through. We don't allow that memory to be stored and used at a later moment. We forget all the good things God has done. We forget all the places he's brought us through and brought us from and pulled us out of. And we forget that if he did it then, he can do it now.